All right, we're back. I am Shaggy Philaletea. This is a blinding array of metatext with the Gospel according to John. And we're actually going to jump right into the middle of a paragraph. We're going to go straight from last time. The woman says to Jesus, "Sir, I perceive that you are a prophet. Our fathers worshipped on this mountain, but you say that in Jerusalem is the place where people ought to worship." That's very interesting because the biblical canon does say that. From what I've been told, the Samaritan canon is not different enough to be remarkable, which can't be possible because they haven't heard the cultural myths that the Judeans set up in exile to make Jerusalem the primary city of the Jews. The Israelis, it was whatever holy place, whatever founding father, patriarch, if you like, mythical hero was said to have had his experience. And here Jesus is going, no, the only place you're allowed to go is on pilgrimage to Jerusalem. That's extreme. That's extreme. You got to think about Muslims. Think about the Crusades. If the only place you can go and properly worship is on Mount Zion, that mountain matters a lot. A lot. But here we've got a Samaritan woman saying, we've always worshipped on this mountain, at this well, and this well was granted us by the patriarch Jacob, and everybody recognizes the Grand Patriarch Joseph, and the Israelites recognize the Great Grand Patriarch Israel. I think that is Jacob, right? But Jacob's father, Isaac, and his father, Abraham, are almost entirely unknown to these people. If you're not Judean and you didn't grow up with the Torah, you've never heard of the great Grand Patriarch. You've never heard of Moses. You've never heard of Abram. You've never heard of anybody but Noah from the way before times. And the only reason you've heard of Noah from the way before times is because Noah is Utnapishtim, and even in Gilgamesh, 4500 BC, Utnapishtim was from the way before times. That region understands the world flood to be when it was. They just had no way of conceiving 10,000 years, 11,000 years before them. They had no way of conceiving 11,000 years. As I'm telling you, 500 is when the copyright, the statute of limitations runs up on folklore. 500 years. And it's been so long nobody remembers the place, the actual year, the actual event, the actual person, and then stories with legs are allowed to be, not just allowed, they're just naturally adopted by the neighboring regions. That's just how that goes. 11,000 years is 22 of those. You understand how long that is in folklore. Even remembering that there was an Utnapishtim Noah type from when the Ice Age suddenly melted and flooded the Northern Hemisphere is a miracle of human memory. And it makes you think that places like this well are aptly named monuments, reminder mines. I've talked about that in my other, or much earlier, Talking to Myself videos. You can find it. Who remembers where? It was probably in Medusa. I don't try to remember that stuff. I'm not. See, I don't like when people do that. Well, in my book, in this chapter of my book, I hate that. It makes me think that all you think about is your work. And when what it is proving that you worked and put labor into the book by memorizing your own work. And that's not labor. That's just a baby. Okay, fine, you've shown me a baby, but what I want you doing is real labor. And so Jesus says to her, "Woman, believe me, the hour is coming when neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem will you worship the Father." What he's saying is that I'm not Jewish the way you think. He's saying that mountain, Zion, this mountain he's probably intending this mountain to be, he being the author, he being the ghost of John the Baptist, is probably trying to set this up as the mountain sin, or like Ararat, or one of these mythical mountains without naming it, because the people would know which mythical mountain is nearby the city that they named in the Galilee. Sychar, Sukar, however you pronounce that. The people reading this would know which holy mountain that is, and what the Samaritans do up there on that mountain. And one of the things that the Samaritans have been accused of doing for 1,000 years, by the time Jesus is walking around the Galilee, is child sacrifice on mountains. So he's saying, you've had 5 husbands. He might be saying, you've sacrificed 5 children ritually on this mountain, and still you're husbandless. You worship what you do not know, Jesus continues. And this is how you can know this is a Gnostic text, to go back to my first 5 episodes of insisting to you this is a Gnostic text. This is Jesus telling you that the God of the Jews, the God of the Samaritans, the God of the Old Testament is the demiurge, also known as the Yaldabaoth, also known as Ha-Satan, the devil. Woman, believe me, I'm going to start over. The hour is coming when neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem will you worship the Father. You worship what you do not know. We worship what we know, for salvation is from the Jews. But the hour is coming, and is now here, when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth, for the Father is seeking such people to worship him. God is spirit, lowercase, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and truth. And so this is doubling down. Jesus isn't saying you have to believe in me. He's saying you have to believe in Aletheia. Understand why I'm a Philaletheia and why I began here. This is Jesus saying, Jesus will say, I am the light, the way, and the truth. The light, the truth, and the way, right? Or the way, the truth, and the light, right? All of those things are Gnostic conceptions of lesser aspects of Godhead. Not the Godhead, just lesser aspects of Godhead. You have to have those things in order to attain Godhead in life. And attaining Godhead in life, if you're familiar with Tool's album art, or if you're familiar with Alex Gray, maybe I can take the inside of your head into this image. It's turning the inside of your head into that image. That's probably I'll just leave up for a while. The woman said to Jesus, I know that Messiah is coming, he who is called Christ. When he comes, he will tell us all things. Jesus said to her, I who speak to you am he. It's not often that Jesus admits to being both Messiah and Christos. Messiach and Christos. Just then, Jesus' disciples came back. Right in the nick of time, to save him from doing something really fucking dumb. They marveled that he was talking with a woman, but no one said, "What do you seek?" or "Why are you talking with her?" So the woman left her water jar and went away into town and said to the people, "Come, see a man who told me all that I ever did. Can this be the Christ?" They went out of town and were coming to him. It's very interesting. He cold read her. Maybe he mind read her. Maybe he Sherlock Holmes'd her, right? Maybe he just noticed that she had 5 mourning bands from having done the sacrifice. Who knows? I don't know that those are a real thing. Anyway, she goes and tells people, "I'm Samaritan. You're Jewish. He just did this thing. Is that what the Christ is? Has he come? Should I convert right now? Have I been making mistakes?" Meanwhile, the disciples were urging him, saying, "Rabbi, eat." But Jesus said to them, "I have food to eat that you do not know about." So the disciples said to one another, "Has anyone brought him something to eat?" Jesus said to them, "My food is to do the will of him who sent me and to accomplish his work." I can feel that. Man, if you go back and watch my old stuff, not old, stuff from the 3 weeks, the weekends have been hard. The weekends have been hard. But yeah, that's real. That's real. You do the work for God and he'll find you food, but he'll also leave you to go hungry. And you just have to be satisfied having done the work. "Do you not say," Jesus continues, "there are yet 4 months, then comes the harvest?" And so what that means is they're in the middle of summer from our vantage. So if we harvest at the end of fall, right? If you think about the reason that we do a Thanksgiving ceremony when we do is because that's at the end, everything has been harvested. And so he's talking about we've got 4 months until October when we start harvesting. And so what that means is that you're eating... I got into an argument with a woman on Twitter about this, who was trying to tell me that they had fresh food, vegetables in the summer. And it's like, no. If you planted summer vegetables, which is unlikely, you're harvesting them over the course of the summer. It's not like wheat, it's not like grains, it's not like things that you can dry and can. That's not even a thing in the Middle Ages. The best time food is in the early fall when you're actually harvesting. Like we talked about the book of Ruth on this channel and how she makes her life gleaning and threshing because it's fall and you can do that because the farms are gathering up these massive stores of food that then go on to feed people through the winter when it's hard and the spring when it's not easy. In the summer, you're mostly foraging. And so they're saying, did somebody buy him food from a forager or a trapper? Where did he get food? What's he talking about? And Jesus is saying, you fucking idiots. We're supposed to be intermittently fasting in the summer because there's not enough food lying around on the ground and not enough animals just about. We're in the fucking desert. We're supposed to be intermittently fasting, not just for religious reasons, so we don't eat up our resources. How the fuck can you want to rebel against Rome and then spend all your money on Roman imported food from Egypt? What the fuck are you doing? That's what Jesus is saying right now in this well. What the fuck are you guys doing? We're supposed to be fasting. What do you mean, did somebody buy me food? We're supposed to be proselytizing. We're supposed to be communicating with people. Why are you giving me funny looks for talking to a Samaritan woman? We're supposed to be proselytizing. God has been calling the Samaritan people back to the proper faith since before he was calling them. Since they literally don't know. They don't know they're practicing in the wrong way. And that's what Jesus is saying. Even if you believed in me, you have to do a little bit more than that. And you have to change your orientation toward God and the way you reach him. Look, I tell you, Jesus says, lift up your eyes and see that the fields are white for harvest. What do I always say? Eyes open, head up, head on a swivel. Use your fucking eyeballs. Look, I tell you, lift up your eyes and see that the fields are white for harvest. Already the one who reaps is receiving wages and gathering fruit for eternal life. He's talking about the Roman emperor. So that the sower and reaper may rejoice together. The way the Roman emperor remains the Roman emperor is by winning wars, by reaping harvests of human beings. Because that's what it's actually like in combat. In combat in the ancient world, we have this idea of shield walls and men dying gloriously at the shield walls and bodies piling up in this horizontal line as the shield walls dwindle and crush again. But that's not how it went. Not how it went at all. There were almost no casualties in the shield wall. All of the casualties happened when one army turned and ran. A reaping like a scythe into their backs is what the cavalry is. In fact, the Scythian, Scythian people were famous for chariots with bladed axles that would literally mow through retreating men. That's what he's talking about. He's talking about the Jews fleeing from combat with the Romans. He's saying, you motherfuckers want to rebel, and then look at you. You're reaping what you sow. Roman iniquity. For here, continues Jesus, the saying holds true, one sows and another reaps. I sent you to reap that for which you did not labor. I sent you to reap that for which you did not labor. What does he mean? Other people's souls. I sent you out to reap other people's souls, to reap proselytization that you did not labor for. Meaning, you have not memorized or been educated in history, mathematics, or the Hebrew canon. But I sent you out to get souls. Why the fuck are you worried about food? That hits me hard. That hits me hard. I wouldn't have been able to read this passage to you even last weekend, even last Monday. Others have labored, and you have entered into their labor. Meaning, others have worked at their souls to get right with God, with the gods, with the universe, and you have entered into their labor. You are becoming a partner in their soul, their enlightenment. Many Samaritans from that town believed in him because of the woman's testimony, says the author. He told me all that I ever did, he repeats her saying. So when the Samaritans came to him, they asked him to stay with them, and he stayed there 2 days. And many more believed because of his word. They said to the woman, it is no longer because of what you said that we believe, for we have heard ourselves, and we know that this is indeed the Savior of the world. And what that means is he went and he preached wisdom. He said, stop killing your babies. Stop doing this. Stop doing that. It's easy. He did what I'm doing because Jesus was the first Philaletheia. After the 2 days, Jesus departed for Galilee. For Jesus himself had testified that a prophet has no honor in his own hometown. That's true. You have no honor where you're from. Honor is renown. Honor is glory. sort of. Glory is for the dead, honor is for the living, and you can't get it at home. There's nothing good enough that you can do to be better than the people who already have honor in foreign wars. So when Jesus came to Galilee, the Galileans welcomed him, having seen all that he had done in Jerusalem at the feast. For they too had gone to the feast. So they welcomed him because he's famous in Jerusalem. So now they're ready for him to be around. But look at rock stars. You don't get famous in your town. You have to go elsewhere. And then when you come back, people are like, wow, you're famous there. I like you now. And look how bitter people are about their high school reunions. So he came again to Cana in Galilee, where he had made the water wine. And at Capernaum, there was an official whose son was ill. When this man heard that Jesus had come from Judea to Galilee, he went to him and asked him to come down and heal his son, for he was at the point of death. So Jesus said to him, unless you, this is a very long, no it's not, this is a footnote. The Greek for you is plural, twice in this verse. So he says, unless the two of you, Jesus said to him, unless the two of you see signs and wonders, you will not believe. The official said to him, sir, come down before my child dies. And Jesus is saying, that's not how it works. You got to believe for the magic to work. You got to believe in the power of prayer for other people's prayers to benefit you. But we've talked about the proper method of prayer. I've talked about the proper method of prayer. You have to have a lot of people praying at the same time, maybe not necessarily the same time, but you have to have a lot of people asking for the same thing over time, and you have to believe it will work. And that's why the secret has no legitimacy, is because the only person who's asking for the thing is you, and you're just forcing it on other people. The official said to Jesus, sir, come down before my child dies. Jesus said to him, go, your son will live. The man believed the word that Jesus spoke to him and went on his way. See, believed. He believed in Jesus. He believed in what Jesus says. And so there's a prayer that I do. Whenever I think bad thoughts, whenever I have like this is happening kind of thought, like this bad thing is about to happen, what I say to myself is, my goddess wouldn't let this happen to me. She wouldn't let this happen. And she never has yet. And this is where I learned that. This has efficacy. As he was going down, that is the man, not Jesus, his servants met him and told him that his son was recovering. So he asked them the hour when he began to get better, and they said to him, yesterday at the 7th hour. That's 1 p.m. So it was about noon while he was talking to that lady, and now it's about 1 p.m. That they're talking about now. The fever left him yesterday at about 1 p.m. The father knew that was the hour when Jesus had said to him, your son will live. And he himself believed in all his household. This was now the second sign that Jesus did when he had come from Judea to Galilee. And this is relevant to my synchronicity post. I was talking about synchronicity and how you can read oracle and you can read truth through coincidences. And so it took the guy nearly 24 hours. It says as he was leaving, but that doesn't mean sequentially in time. It just means he was leaving, and as he was doing that, he was still making the 20 or whatever, however long. His servants found him and told him, hey, it actually turns out he's getting better. And they're like, oh, well, when did the upturn happen? And it turns out it was the exact moment, the exact hour that he was talking with Jesus. And that's a synchronicity where you can go, oh, that guy's special. You can look at that and you can go, oh, he did know something. And honestly, Jesus could have just been dismissing him because the guy told him what his symptoms were and told him what the illness was. And Jesus was smart enough to know that the illness would pass on its own in that time if the child hadn't died. But that doesn't matter. People just knowing the illness well enough to do that, like, you would be amazed how many human beings don't know to wash their hands and why to wash their hands. You would be amazed the number of human beings who do things that make them get sick and don't realize that they're making themselves sick. You would be amazed at how people look at you and you can give them simple remedies to clear chronic illnesses, just by understanding the chronic illness. After this, there was a feast of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Now there is in Jerusalem by the sheep gate a pool, in Aramaic called Bethesda, which has 5 roofed colonnades. And these lay a multitude of invalids, blind, lame, and paralyzed. One man was there who had been an invalid for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he had already been there a long time, he said to him, "Do you want to be healed?" The sick man answered him, "Sir, I have no one to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up, and while I am going, another steps down before me." Jesus said to him, "Get up, take up your bed, and walk." And at once the man was healed, and he took up his bed and he walked away. What that could mean is that this guy had never been invalid. This guy was just depressed and wanted someone to recognize that he needed help. And sometimes that's all it takes. I talked about self-starting and self-motivation, and sometimes really all it takes is for somebody to notice you. Notice that you're struggling and go, "Hey, bud, I know you're struggling. Do you want some help?" For you to go, "No, I don't actually need help. I can do this." Philaletheia and philosophers were and remain. The true philosopher remains concerned with the mental health of everyone around him. The problem is that philosophers who go by the title, so-called, self-styled, care about nothing. Now that day was the Sabbath. So the Jews said to the man who had been healed, "It's the Sabbath, and it is not lawful for you to take up your bed." But he answered that the man who healed me, that man said to me, "Take up your bed and walk." So I'm going to. Because that man did what you wouldn't. Do you understand that this is where atheism comes from? That this is where the rage against the rich comes from? That this is where the rage against welfare and the welfare state and the nanny state and the rage that middle Americans feel toward liberals? Do you understand that this is where it comes from? The spite and the hate? It comes from the refusal to help. SNAP still refuses I'm certain that they've overturned my application for food stamps again. But they're not telling me why. I know the answer. It's because I'm a white male. I should be able to provide for myself or find a way to do it. I'm still healthy enough to be a criminal if I'm healthy enough to ask for help. And so he says, "This man who healed me, when you trampled over me, when you let people skip me in line, when you wouldn't even give me a hand to get into the healing waters, for 38 years, this man helped me. And he told me to take my bed and leave. So I'm gonna, even if it's against your bullshit law." He doesn't have to have read the book to know that even by the first century, for 700 years, God had been fed up with the Sabbath. That Sabbath is blasphemy. Not working on the Sabbath day is blasphemy. Recognizing the Sabbath as a holy day is blasphemy against the Jewish God in their books. I've been reading this intensely for a month, and nowhere does God say to maintain the Sabbath and keep it holy. Nowhere. That might be in Deuteronomy, but Deuteronomy is full of shit. It's way too late. The composition is way too late. The Torah is garbage. Utter garbage. Toss it in a fire and leave it there. Every single one of them. Every copy ever. It's useless. It's worship of the demiurge. And that's the end of this episode. You know what I say.